Sure. I'm Dr. John Cox, the staff cardiologist at the Freeman Health System. I was present during the disaster of May 22nd as part of the response of the medical staff to the disaster in town. We had all come in from a variety of disasters in our own lives. One of the physicians was rescued from the Walmart through the roof. One of the physicians was barely escaped by going to a kitchen when the IHOP was destroyed. She actually hitched a ride to the hospital and started working right away as a neurosurgeon. There were people from all over town that responded, physicians and nurses and all kinds of staff, volunteers. We saw over the first 48 hours almost 1,000 patients, dealt with all kinds of trauma, and being the only existing trauma center in the city, it all came to us, and so it was our job to triage and to ship to some other outlying hospitals the patients that could be shipped to allow room for others. The emergency room staff flexed so that all hands were on deck. We had people carrying trash out and helping families find other loved ones and doing all kinds of tasks that are not normally assigned, and Ashley did an amazing job. I have to say I've never witnessed a situation like that ever in my life. It was amazing response by the staff, and I'll never forget it. My daughter's house was destroyed in the process. I did not know whether she was alive or dead, so my wife and I actually clambered over 8 blocks of rubble to get to her house, only to discover that she had actually made her way all the way across town walking to my house. Once I discovered she was alive, I came to the hospital. We had taken all the available space. The Heart Institute was being used for trauma triage. We had a young woman who had a broken leg, had 2 little daughters. Her husband had been shipped to another hospital. So the daughter who had survived the tornado actually took charge of the 2 little girls. She's an autism therapist, and so she took the 2 little girls and cared for them, and actually with the mom's permission took them to our home for the night for them to have some place to stay until we could locate other relatives. My wife went to the holding area and then on to the admissions area to reunite families with their loved ones as best she could and take names of missing. My daughter-in-law was a respiratory therapist who had worked for St. John's and barely missed going to work at the heart of the tornado. She was supposed to be on duty at 6, and because of the hail was a little late, saved her life. She went to work in the emergency room. My other sons were grunt labor they do other things, and they just were pushing people around, and that's the kind of response we saw from everybody. We had all kinds of people that were doing things outside their normal job description. To be able to process that many people in that short a time was really the thing that amazed me. And we had all kinds of stories of people with narrow escapes. I took care of a little man who, 80 years old, who had a mattress over his head 1 minute. The next minute he was in the street 300 feet away, and all he had was a few abrasions. I mean, how he did that, who knows. Lots of people who the only remaining room in their house was the room that they were hiding in. Told their story that they had hid in a closet, hid in a laundry room, and walked away. We had people with very, very serious injuries, and then we were able to resuscitate those people, get them to the OR. There were some that unfortunately were too far gone. We had a period of a couple of hours in the midst of all this where we ran out of blood. And there were some people who needed blood, and unfortunately it led to their premature death because the city ran out. There were, but more people than not actually were close to death and were able to be snatched back from that to live and go home. We have still a number of critically ill people still in hospital, but actually having seen all those nearly 1,000 patients, most of them actually have been able to go home already, and only the really critically ill are still here. There was a retired pastor that He was in his 80s, still had his Sunday best clothes on. He had actually been looking for a daughter in the rubble when I happened to be heading back from looking for my daughter. I bumped into him, and as I passed him, he was still looking for his daughter and was quite despondent because her house was pretty much gone. And he was commiserating about his life, and you know, a religious man, retired pastor, and he said, you know, I love God, and I've lived a long time, but I've never seen anything like this, and I've never, you know, I only can believe that we somehow have messed with our environment and messed with God's creation to bring this on ourselves. And so I said, well, I'm worried about these storms, and I'm worried about the number of them. And it wasn't long that his daughter walked up and tapped him on the shoulder. And the guy, you know, understandably broke down, and you know, it was one of those moments that you couldn't have scripted that in Hollywood any more dramatic than that. It was, and she had actually ran out of her house into a neighbor who had a basement, and the basement collapsed on them, and they were able to get out. And the pastor, you know, was able to reunite with his daughter right there in the street, amongst the fire and the broken trees and the turned over cars, and the old man and his daughter walked away reunited. It was quite a moment. You know, there's no way that a hospital could ever prepare for such a disaster, because there were so many casualties, and to have, you know, 40 or 50% of the medical capacity taken away before we even start the disaster is problematic. But disaster drills and preparation helped us a lot, and we have those on a regular basis. We have citywide disaster drills, we have hospital disaster drills, we have well-trained physicians and nurses who are wily veterans of all kinds of things, sometimes war veterans, staffing our facility. So you have to have the people that can stand up to the wind and the fire, and still put out the fight and put out the fire, and put up the fight and put out the fire. And so we have a combination of skill, compassion, and preparation, I think, is what you have to deal with it. And then you just have to hope for the best and hope that your efforts are good enough. But there's nothing that prepares you for that magnitude of a disaster. There's no drilling that really makes you ready for that. But you hope that you have people that are resilient and responsive, and that's what we saw. We saw that the staff of Freeman were resilient and responsive and skilled and compassionate, and stood up to the task very well. And the citizens of Joplin are so much better for the fact that they were there and did that. I saw people that left near-death experiences of their own, and the first thing they thought of was coming to the hospital and work. Not to go home and you know, cry, or to go home and have a shot of whiskey. They came to work. They put on their big boy pants and they went to work. And those are the heroes. Those are the heroes. The people that thought not of themselves, but of what they could do for their community.